Hello, I am Dr. Daniel Mitchell, a certified family physician from the United States, coming to you today from Family Hospital in Da Nang. We would like to answer some questions about COVID antibody testing, which is now offered at Family Hospital. In general, the COVID antibody test should be performed if someone thinks they have previously been exposed to the COVID virus. It is also possible in select cases to test for antibodies after vaccination. The COVID antibody test shows just that. It shows whether you have antibodies to the COVID virus. Let me explain. The COVID virus on its surface has proteins. These proteins we call spike proteins. When the COVID virus enters the body, our immune system, which is very sophisticated and very complicated, recognizes these spike proteins as foreign substances and wants to get rid of them. Part of what our immune system does is to form antibodies that help neutralize and kill the COVID viral particle. The COVID antibody test does not show if you actively have the virus in your body. If someone is sick and thinks they have COVID, the antibody test will not be helpful, but they should get a PCR test to look for the COVID virus. In general, if you have COVID antibodies in your system that show positive on the test, that will give you immunity to the virus. But we need to understand it is not a guarantee, but generally does provide immunity if you have the antibodies. We should not perform the antibody test if we think the person is sick with COVID. If you have a fever or symptoms of COVID, it is better to get a PCR test. As well, it takes the body's immune system about 2 weeks to form antibodies. So if you have been exposed to the COVID virus within 2 weeks or been sick within the last 2 weeks, the antibody test may not show antibodies. So it is best to wait to get that test later. Certainly, there are some limitations to the antibody test. Like all tests we do in the laboratory, they are good tests, but they are not 100% accurate. There can be false negative tests, meaning the person has antibodies, but the antibody test is still negative. There can also be false positives, where the antibody is not actually in the person's system, but the test is positive anyway. We are exposed to many viruses in our life. Our body makes antibodies to many of them. Sometimes these antibodies from one virus will cross-react with another virus and give a false positive test result. Generally, if we have antibodies to the COVID virus, we are protected or immune from getting the infection. But with time, the levels of the antibodies decrease. Sometimes our immune system, for different reasons, can become weakened and not produce enough antibodies, so it is possible to become reinfected. Especially, we know the virus can mutate, such as recently the Delta strain has now been replaced by the Omicron strain as the most prevalent. There is some cross-reactivity from the antibody from one viral strain to another, but we are more likely to get reinfected with a different strain than the strain for which we initially develop antibodies. Even if we do not get complete immunity, typically if we have antibodies against one strain, it will help us be protected from hospitalization and severe disease from a different strain. The COVID antibody test at Family Hospital costs 298,000 dong. Generally, results are available within 2 hours. So that concludes our questions and responses today about the antibody test for COVID. We trust that you will stay healthy. We at Family Hospital are glad to see you to assist you in staying healthy. Take care.